Hey there, welcome to Takeaway with Sam Oches, a podcast from Nation's Restaurant News. I am Sam Oches, editor-in-chief here at NRN, and this is the show where I give you an all-access pass to the restaurant industry's most influential decision makers. This week, I'm talking with Cord Thomas and Michael Berger, CEO and managing partner, respectively, of Pupatella, a Neapolitan pizzeria concept out of the Washington, D.C. area that is looking to bring back the nostalgic neighborhood restaurant experience of yesteryear. Cord and Michael were previously executives with the Elevation Burger franchise, and after selling that concept to Fat Brands, they developed a friendship with the founders of Pupatella that evolved into a business partnership and an opportunity to scale another exciting concept. Cord and Michael are passionate about scaling Pupatella as a neighborhood restaurant that is woven into the fabric of each community where it operates, the kind of place where Little League teams go after games. And they joined the podcast to talk about that strategy and why a more upscale, full-service pizza experience is still in demand in a convenience-hungry world. In this conversation, you will learn more about why scaling a complex supply chain requires that you consolidate your base of operations, why an off-the-beaten-path location with loyal customers is just as good as one at the corner of Main and Main, and why you should stick to doing what you know best and where you know best to do it. Jumping now into my interview with Pupatella partners Cord Thomas and Michael Berger. Also, don't forget to stick around after the interview as I will share my 6 takeaways from this discussion, actionable insights that you can take with you on the go. Okay, I'm here with Cord Thomas, CEO, and Michael Berger, managing partner of Pupatella, an 8-unit pizzeria out of the Washington, D.C. area. Guys, really glad to have you here and very excited to talk pizza, although forgive me, we scheduled this interview for lunchtime and we're probably all going to get to this interview very, very hungry, but that's a good thing. I'm just going to want pizza even more after this. Guys, let's just start by talking about the story of Pupatella. What's this brand all about? It's very authentic Italian pizza, as I know, but tell me a little bit more about sort of the origin story, if you will.
Well, first, Sam, thanks for having us. It's an honor to be on here today and to share our story with you. So Pupatella started about 13 years ago with our founder, Enzo Elgarme, a native from Naples, Italy, who came to the U.S. to study medicine, mostly because his parents said, the last thing we want you to do is to go into the restaurant business with us over here in Italy. So please go to the U.S. and study medicine. So he came over here.
They had been in it for a few generations in Naples.
So he got to the U.S., started college, and realized right away that there was no pizza around here that he grew up with and that he liked. And he kept trying all the different pizza places and going around, and it just wasn't. He wasn't finding what really kind of fit that craving for him. So he decided, begrudgingly to his family, that he would start his own little pizza cart, just to do it a few days a week in a local community called Ballston in Arlington. It's a little neighborhood. So he rolled out this pizza cart and started selling pizza. This tiny, tiny little cart. Everyone thought he was hosting a puppet show or something else with how this thing looked. It didn't look like a food truck. It wasn't the big craze like it is now. He started selling pizzas and just started building a really tremendous following of people seeing what the food could taste like. So from there, he went on and signed a lease with a really small brick and mortar location. And that was going so well, and he needed more and more dining room space that when the tenant next door went out, he leased that space and cut a giant hole in the side of the wall to create another dining room on the backside, just to be able to serve the amount of guests that were coming in. Then he pushed out the back to the patio, and today he's pushed out into a parking lot on the other side that he's leased in order to just take all of the guests. It's been lines out the door since day one, and it's the true secret sauce to it is it's all about tradition. It's all about being authentic. It's all about doing things the way that they've done for over 150 years in Naples, Italy, sourcing the right ingredients, the care in the product and the dough. It might take a little longer to make our products, but it's made with love and made with tradition. And that's the initial story of the first location. And then Michael and I joined up with Enzo about 6 years ago now to start the growth of it. We franchised one location, and that went really well. So we decided to focus on corporate growth. We've successfully completed 2 capital raises. And today we have a total of 8 locations open. We have 2 more that'll open by the end of the year and 2 more scheduled for Q1 of next year. So we'll be at 12 by the end of Q1, and we've got the runway to build about another 5 to 10 more.
That's very exciting. Well, and Michael, tell me about what jumped out at you about Pupatella, because the two of you guys were working together before, and you've both come into this brand now today. Why? Why was this something you guys wanted to do?
Great question. So the better burger market was real hot there for a while, and Cord and I were 2 of the founding partners at Elevation Burger. We knew that there was going to be an end to that journey, and we were in a very fortunate position where we had several parties that were interested. We ended up selling the company to a publicly traded competitor, Fat Brands. But we knew, hey, we've been in this restaurant industry. It was our lifeblood. We loved it. A common acquaintance actually just ended up introducing us to Enzo and Anastasia. And Cord and I had both been to their pizzeria, several times. It's local. It had notoriety. The food was outstanding. And someone just introduced us, and it started kind of over just a breakfast chat, really just providing them some advice. It's a small community here in DC in the restaurant industry, and you always want to see people succeed. You'd never pull for anybody's failure, even your competitors. It's a tough market to fail in, or it's a tough industry to fail in. So we really just started over some breakfast chats. And after a few months, of chatting, they kind of looked at us one morning on one of these breakfast chats. They looked a little nervous, and kind of were like, hey, guys, in our breakfast chats, we've really learned that there's a lot to the business side of this when it comes to expansion. We know we want to expand. We don't really know, the machinations of how to go through that process. You guys seem to have a full toolkit. It seems like it could be good timing for you. You guys are in the process of, diligence and selling your current company. Would you guys ever consider partnering with us? And Cord and I kind of looked at each other and were like, this is exciting. The authenticity, the product is outstanding. Working with a husband and wife couple that at the point in time, they were boyfriend and girlfriend. It was exciting. It was something near, we knew it, our main partners at Elevation were husband and wife, and, kind of that it felt right. And the timing was good. Cord and I frequently do a lot of talks at colleges, universities, industry associations. And a lot of the questions you get is, well, how do you be an entrepreneur? Like, how do you get into some of this stuff? What are the tools and tricks that you can teach us? And there's a lot obviously there, but so much of it's timing. And it was really good timing for us. We're on the path to complete that journey, and it was really exciting to set off on this new journey. And for Cord and I, this is a really exciting journey too, because a lot of Elevation's growth was through franchising. And so that was a totally different expansion model. We were in, 15 states, Cord, and like 6 different countries at certain points. And, you don't get to see the operations every day. And so for us here, being able to develop, in a smaller local market and really build out that brand, really have the control, has been really exciting.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned people asking you about what it takes to be an entrepreneur, but what Enzo and his wife are doing is different than what ultimately you guys are now doing, which is it's one thing to open a restaurant, but it's another thing to scale a restaurant, right? And you guys clearly have experience doing both things. And I'm wondering what was scalable about this brand, because when you guys partnered with them at that time, if I'm thinking this is like 2016, 2017. We were probably still really in the thick of fast casual pizza, and of course Domino's was still, dominating the pizza delivery business. What made you guys take a look at a Neapolitan pizzeria and say to yourselves, this could be something we could scale? Cord, what was it for you that you thought? Or Michael, you want to answer that? You go ahead, go first.
I was going to say, let me offer an initial color commentary for Cord, because then he can play off this. Because when we first, they asked us, and obviously we wanted to be thoughtful about, answering the question and making sure that we were going to do right by them and the pizzeria by expanding it. I look at Cord, we're having lunch there in the original location, and I look at him and I'm like, dude, this is like art this is very eclectic the way they've got the, because they developed, Cord just explained how they developed it. I'm like, how the hell are we going to expand this? Like, there's no, like, Enzo's back there slapping dough. He's tossing this much salt in this and that much salt in that. And like, I'm like, man, this is, we're going to pull it together.
Yep. So I mean, yeah, that was exactly the comment Michael made to me, was how are we going to do this? But we both agreed we love the food, we love the idea, we love the challenge. It's a little bit different in order to how do you scale a restaurant of this with this many recipes and everything else. So we started off where you would start off anything, and all right, well, let's try to develop an operations manual. Let's see what we can do with this brand, just to go in, develop an operations manual and see if it can be replicated, if we can train this to other people. So we were chasing Enzo around and the other cooks around as they're putting a little bit of salt in. And we're like, okay, don't just throw it in there. Let's put this bowl underneath you. And now we'll go ahead and measure it. And is this 1 teaspoon? How many grams is this? Everything, just trying to get all of the exact ingredients down so it can be replicated.
And Enzo's answer to a lot of things when we were like, well, how much of that goes in? And he'd like reach in and he'd be like, oh, like that much. We're like, no. Like, okay, put it in this metal bowl first.
He's the chef. He's an artist. That's what they do. And so we followed around and started seeing exactly if they could be recreated. And then we actually found something that was very interesting as we started to replicate these. We always thought we come from the cheeseburger world of doing that over and over. We actually find that the pizzas are a little bit more forgiving in the oven than a burger. 10 more seconds in an oven is actually fine. 10 more seconds on a grill dries out that patty. There was a lot of things that are a little bit more forgiving, especially as the toppings go on, the flavors, and just the depth of flavor in the products as well. I don't know, it just speaks to guests in a different way. So I think that there's people are always looking for a more unique opportunity to try something that they may have not tried before, and they don't always have that bar of this is exactly what it's supposed to taste like. So as we do replicate and do go places, people are experiencing new flavors and okay, that's how it's supposed to be. If that makes sense.
All right, so let's start with just the stay with the menu here, because you're talking about the scalability, obviously being able to systemize the menu, a big part of that. And this menu is important because it's incredibly authentic Neapolitan pizza. Tell me get into some of these details here. You were telling me before we hit record, VPN, what's that all about? And why is this so crucial to the Pupatella success story? Tell me about the menu.
Well, first I want to, before we get into that stuff, which I'll let Michael talk about the VPN certification, I do want to toot Mike's horn a little bit. He is a supply chain genius. That's what he focused on with Elevation, moving, hundreds of thousands of pounds of organic meat across the world in order to get things done, and finding ways to make relationships with suppliers. And so he was critical at getting that set up, because if you can't have all the same ingredients everywhere, you can't expand. So that was the first and most important step.
And when we met, that's where I was going to kind of start a little bit of my comments is, expansion starts. And obviously when I looked at Cord and said that, I knew, right, operations manual, training manual, we're going to need all that. It was a little more tongue in cheek, but then the next step is systemization of your ingredients, because what exactly, as you said, Sam, this restaurant is so, driven by the cheese we get every week from Naples, and the oven that we get out of Naples, the flour that's coming, the 00 flour that's coming out of Naples, the whole peeled tomatoes. And so when we met Enzo and Anastasia, they had done a fabulous job of kind of cobbling their supply chain together, because obviously when you're one restaurant, it's really hard with limited scale to convince people to work with you. But they had like 5 or 6 different distributors. They had, probably a dozen trucks that were coming every week. And so it was a bear. And when Cord and I, when we decided to go on this journey with Enzo, the one thing we promised him was, Enzo, we're not the chefs. We're not the guys that know how to assemble a pizza just like you'd find in Naples. That's your role. What we are is the guys that can systematize what you do and help you replicate that. And the first thing we need to do, Enzo, is we're going to need to systematize that supply chain, but we are never going to ask you to compromise on product. If you say this is what I want, I will say this is what you're getting. I will get it for you faster, cheaper, and as consistently as need be, and in a way that we could scale it. So one of my favorite stories of one of our vendors, he's an amazing guy. Sal Leone is a guy that's, he's got some family in Italy. He's up in Jersey. He was driving cheese down himself to Enzo, and this is all, once a week. It was coming out of Naples, 4 of our cheeses, and he was getting it out of family contacts there. He was handwriting paper receipts with no dollar amounts or item descriptions, or just like you'd find if you almost went down to a farmer's market kind of thing. And so we helped Sal amongst all of his other small groups. We work with Performance Food Service, which is now the number 2 largest food service company in the U.S. We've been with them for years, and we had the guy go in and literally just trace every single thing, work with Sal to bring Sal. Sal never worked with a third-party distributor, but we got all of that exact same product in through the PFG pipeline. We eliminated, several vendors. We consolidated to a single vendor, a couple of trucks a week, everything in the same place with PFG's buying power. And we, along the way, we've not had to make switches on vendors. So we've been, from that original restaurant, we are still buying the same ingredients.
That's incredible. And to that end, with the supply chain, how far out, Michael, do you have to view your scaling? Because if you're like, okay, we're just going to grow in DC, you building that supply chain, not so hard. But if you're like, we view ourselves all over the East Coast, oh, we're going to go to the West Coast, that's a whole different animal. So I guess, how do you balance those aspirations for growth with knowing that when you do that, there's a lot of work behind the supply chain you have to do, concurrently?
So much. And that's one of the things that we, learned kind of through the school of hard knocks with Elevation Burger. Our first 6 restaurants at Elevation Burger were in, remember, franchising model. We weren't running them, but directly. Arlington, Virginia, Maryland, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Montclair, New Jersey, Austin, Texas. And so we were like, wow. And then they're like, all right, Michael, figure the supply chain out. So, what we ended up doing here, right, is you consolidate a base of operations. And so what we, when I say PFG is really a partner in this for us, they really are. They quarterback it. So if we go to a new market, they have distribution centers in other markets, and they can cross dock. They can pull stuff. So our Richmond restaurant actually comes out of the Virginia PFG, and our local markets here in DC come out of the Maryland one. Well, we're pulling product from Maryland because we can consolidate into this house here, shrink, shipping costs, and then we do a backhaul down on a PFG truck to Virginia. As far as the supplier side goes, keeping them abreast several months in advance, helps them. Our product it really is, the cheese is made fresh pretty much every week. And so as long as we're giving them projections ahead of time, several months ahead of time, the producers can scale. And they're really excited. We're working with some really, really small suppliers that really have just been, a lot of them, even product stays inside of Italy and doesn't even always leave Italy. And so they're really excited. One of the things I found in my in our travels with Elevation Burger and working with really small family farms with all the organic beef is a lot of these suppliers don't sometimes know where the product is ending up. So there's a shroud of mystery sometime between the supplier and where it ends up at the restaurant. And some of that's intentional because, distributors make some money through and through. And that's where they make their money. And so sometimes that's hidden. So I go way out of our way to make sure that we connect directly with our suppliers so that they know our story. They know where their product's going, and they're really proud of it. They're really proud to know that they're working with an American restaurant company, that their product is out there every day, that it's really, it's the make or break thing as to what our quality is. So connecting with those suppliers and really telling them the story about where the product is being served is very powerful.
And does that relationship then help with cost? Because obviously I'm assuming Pupatella customers are willing to pay a premium on your pizzas, but Americans also still probably have kind of a ceiling for what they're spending on a pizza. So all of these very authentic ingredients, I imagine, cost a little bit more. But tell me, how do you ensure you can keep costs low while investing in very high quality ingredients?
Yeah, there's definitely economy of scale as you continue to grow. There's not much you can do with one or two locations, but as you continue to grow and stay with the same suppliers, they have some shipping savings that they can pass on to you. They have projected growth. You become a staple for them. They can offer you some marketing money back, which is great. So there's a lot of opportunities for them to feel like a true partner. And being a good partner, they can figure out ways to lower the overall cost for us to continue our growth.
Before we move on from the menu conversation, I did also want to clarify, what is VPN? Can you, because I know we threw that term around, but I think, remote working from my computer when I think VPN. What is VPN? Why is that important to Pupatella?
Right. So it's technically a VPN. I'm going to botch this because I don't speak fluent Italian, but it's basically the Association Vera Pizzeria Napolitana. It was essentially an informal community of the oldest pizza makers in Italy years ago in like the 80s, I think early mid 80s. And they decided there's a lot of people calling pizza Neapolitan pizza around the world right now, but that's not Neapolitan pizza. We make Neapolitan pizza. And so they came up with a set of standards. And they standardized it. They created this association amongst these old families that were making pizza. And then they started offering certifications to others to be like, hey, you can say that you are actually making this in the 200-year-old tradition. And then somewhere along the way, I'm not quite sure what year, it actually became like a quasi-Italian government entity. And so now it is partially overseen actually by the Italian government, because as you can imagine, outwardly facing, it reflects quite a bit on Italy and Naples in particular. And so it's an association that now offers these certifications that ensure that you are producing things true to form as you would have found in Naples 150 or more years ago. It ensures certain types of ovens. Ensures the surface that you're slapping the dough on. It ensures the exact mixer that you're using. It's got to be a spiral arm mixer. It must be a double O, super ground flour from Italy. It's got to be Italian whole peeled tomatoes. It's a whole set of criteria. You must use, buffalo mozzarella that is coming from, a location within the region of Naples that they've deemed acceptable.
And you guys are you were saying before we hit record, you're the largest VPN certified pizzeria in the US. Am I saying that right?
Yep. As of a few weeks ago, we now have 8 certified locations, largest in the US, and we're going to continue to grow. It's part of our promise to our customers that we're in a stay true to form. And what better way than having the designation of VPN?
Congratulations. That's incredible. So let me ask you this then. Obviously you want to keep that certification, but does it ever box you in? I mean, certainly with like innovation, I imagine you can't just go innovate your menu. You're not going to go be like, hey, we're going to do a buffalo chicken pizza and call it a day, because you would lose your certification, right? So how do you approach the idea of innovation while also making sure you're staying within the bounds of that certification?
So only a few pizzas are actually certified by the Naples government. So the techniques are all the same and everything else, but it still allows us to have a little bit of leeway on some of the fun toppings for limited time offers or other things as well.
So you can still do buffalo chicken.
We won't. We can.
More than the VPN, what'll always box us in is Enzo's commitment to the tradition. Back to that conversation I was saying when we were like, Enzo, we promise we're, what you say goes. And he was like, actually in the conversation actually said no buffalo chicken pizzas, no pineapple, no blah, blah, blah. So, the authenticity and the tradition of what we want to be as a pizzeria, it's very consistent with VPN. But the techniques, as you said, Cord, those techniques for the dough stretching, the dough always, no matter what, the dough will always have to be the same. No matter what, our red sauce must always be comprised of the right types of tomatoes. No matter what, how they stretch that dough, how we mix that dough, that is consistent across the whole menu. Now, as Cord said, there's a second, and I won't even try and pronounce this, but it's DOC. Which actually, so the VPN is kind of the certification of the process, the restaurant, the whole procedures. And then there's DOC, which is actually individual items. So 3 of our pizzas, 3, right, Cord?
Yeah. Great.
3 of our pizzas are actually DOC certified, and you'll see that on like bottles of wine from Italy, DOC.
Yeah.
And so those ones must stay exactly as. And when they come in every year to kind of recertify us, they're checking that stuff.
Yeah. And they've been known to strip certifications from restaurants who no longer adhere to the same things they did. So, they do keep a pretty tight leash on these things, which is great.
Yeah, that is good. Well, and obviously you guys are really leaning heavily into the authenticity, so this kind of helps keep you honest, and that's great. Moving into some of the sort of experience and ambiance of Pupatella, because I know this is really also the second most critical thing to success of this brand is that experience you're creating. I want to start with service model, because this was something that has changed over time. So you started as a food truck, and then Enzo and Anastasia opened brick and mortar. And as you've expanded, you've moved into full service. Did it start? So is the first location that was counter service and you moved into full service? And tell me about some of this transition that's been made for Pupatella.
Sure. So the to start off, it wasn't even a food truck back then. It was a food cart, little tiny cart. You could barely move inside of it. And it started off just as most pizzerias are in Naples, where we walk up, you order at the counter, and then you go sit down. So it was more of that what was thrown around for a while, that like fast casual 2.0, where you order at the register and then you go sit down, but you have a server that comes by and brings you additional drinks and real silverware, real plates, all of that kind of stuff. That's how Pupatella really started. What we noticed after the pandemic was people really wanted a little bit more service. They wanted to, we almost got forced into a couple of our locations, people wanting to sit in certain areas and they couldn't order at the counter because of some of the regulations in areas. And that kind of gave us this, maybe this will work. Started noticing that customers were really enjoying that whole environment a little bit better. It was a little less chaotic. As I mentioned before, there's lines out the door. So when you walk up to Pupatella, it can feel quite overwhelming, especially if you're unclear of the process. I order first, then I get a table. It can get a little confusing. But the most important thing was, yeah, exactly. The most important thing for us was we're noticing, as prices do increase for everybody with the inflation that's gone on. And people are tipping on to-go orders and on a bunch of Uber Eats orders, and just got kind of used to that. What can we do to differentiate ourselves? And that is to uptier our service. People have a choice where they're going to spend their dollars, and we want to make sure that when they're spending them there, it's not just about the food, which we've always done really well, but how can we uplift this service and offer a better cocktail menu, a better wine menu, just a better experience for the full meal for customers to come in and enjoy, and also remove away some of that confusion. So I know that a lot of our competitors decided to get rid of the front of house and get rid of, just started to go to pickup and delivery. And we really just feel that that's a sad situation, especially with the neighborhoods we're trying to be in and trying to be that pizzeria for local families. We want to make sure that they feel loved and cared for when they show up to our locations, and that they also get a chance to even hear about some of our specials and some of the other things that we do. So it's not just order the same pepperoni or margarita pizza every time, but try something different. We can suggest that with table service.
That changes, obviously, your labor model. And in the last couple of years, labor clearly has been really tough for the restaurant industry. So how have you guys ensured that shift to full service hasn't been a punch in the gut that, has made it harder to hire? How do you figure that out to make sure it's not dragging the brand down, that you're doing the full service?
So I think, first of all, I'll start by saying that I think that labor has been an issue for every industry in the pandemic. And, I think we lost a lot of really, really solid folks that were longtime restaurant people during the pandemic, and trying to bring people back and bring people in and show them that there's dignity in these jobs, and there can be a long-term career in these jobs is important. So we've obviously had our challenges with recruiting folks, but we start with some younger people and we train them up. We tend to pay better than others, which is very helpful. That's just it's been a little bit of a challenge, but we think it's well worth it in the long run, just to invest a little bit more in the service side and in the overall costs and recruitment.
And I'd add to that too, obviously going to a weighted table service gives us more flexibility in, how we would distribute tips. And so in the table service model, we've been able to hire servers that, are motivated to provide great service because it's reflected in the tips. When you were doing counter serve and there's really no identifiable, server, then you're pooling tips and it becomes more of like a team effort, which is great. But when you get the individual servers at these tables, we have seen more folks coming to us who are proficient at waiting tables, and that's what they make their career out of. And I'm sure all three of us on this phone call have probably spent some time working at a restaurant on the floor, and that makes a big difference. And so we have been able to see that we've been able to put a lot of tips into our servers' pockets, and we've been able to see an increase in satisfaction from those guests.
That's great. Going back to a word you used, Cord, earlier, neighborhood. This is big for you guys. I know you guys really have positioned yourselves as a neighborhood pizza joint. What does that mean? What do you mean by neighborhood pizza joint? What are you trying to create with that kind of energy?
Sure. So I think we can all think back to an era where after a little league game, after a soccer game, or when you didn't got a great report card or anything else, your family would go to the local pizzeria to celebrate, or your baseball team would go to the local pizzeria to celebrate. And there were all these great locations, really dug deep inside of these neighborhoods. In the restaurant world, everyone's chasing the flash hot new neighborhoods, right? Or they're chasing the shopping centers and all of these things. We think that there's really a misstep in that, because you can really have a chance to be something special to that community. Communities that never get anything new or anything cool, or are just tired of their same old chain locations that have been there forever. And so we're taking really unique spots deep in neighborhoods so that we can actually be part of that fabric. One thing that's been fun for us is Michael and I joke around all the time. We really love these old Pizza Hut buildings that are kind of going by the wayside as Pizza Hut decides to go to just do delivery only models or smaller dining room models. And we think they had some of the best real estate in the neighborhoods for generations, and it really gives us an opportunity to go in and what we consider to be an up-tiering the pizza location, but it's where people that when they were kids went to get their pizza after their baseball games or on Friday night. So if we can go in and take over these old locations deep in neighborhoods and provide a better product that people are more excited about, with a great bar offering and wine offering and everything else, it makes total sense for us. And we also think we have customers for life then too. It's not just, oh, what's the hot thing we can go down to this street and check out. We really like these established neighborhoods, and just gives us a chance to be part of the community. We sponsor local teams. We just hosted a girls soccer group that came in to watch one of the games on repeat from the World Cup. We can be the major sponsor for boosters clubs, and we can just do a lot of different kind of fun events in these neighborhoods because that's who we are, and that's what we're tied to.
And one of the things that's really been nice about this strategy and looking at this type of real estate is it's standalone, so we can create that identity. It's got parking, which in some of these shopping centers can be at a premium, and so being a neighborhood pizzeria, if you want to be the natural gathering spot, it also needs to be a hassle-free experience. Yep. And so being a single shot destination rather than having to wade through the traffic to get past the Target that's the third busiest in the X market to find your pizzeria, that's really been helpful. And to what Cord was saying, it gives us this opportunity to do some events. So some of the stuff, I think we briefly chatted on this when before we kind of turned on record, but neighborhood pizzerias have very specific marketing strategies. And so some of the stuff we're doing, coming up here at the beginning of next month, we've partnered with Arlington County Public Safety, which is their public safety office, their fire department, and their police department for their annual 9/11 5K. That they were the first responders at 9K for the at 9/11 for the Pentagon. And so we're participating as an after race event. So we're going to set easy up tents up. We're going to bring a band out there. We're going to have some beer specials, some pizza specials for special prices. bring your families, and it'll go late night. The race actually ends kind of late. And so they're going to come over to us from about 8 to 10 p.m. and we're going to kind of treat it like it's a big block party.
Mm.
Just for those who don't know, the Pentagon is located in Arlington, so it's a good time for us.
Sure, right.
But it's about a mile and a half from that location where we're going to host the party.
I love that model. I mean, you spoke with my colleague Holly Petrie a few weeks ago, and she wrote about this in her story. But when you describe things around sort of being like a Pizza Hut, I mean, that resonates deep in my bones because that was me. I was the baseball team, go to Pizza Hut afterward, and to hear some of those descriptions is super nostalgic for me. Now I've got 2 little kids, and I'm looking for that place that I want to take my kids to and have that. And by the way, I don't have that, right? I mean, as I look around my area, all the takeout only, delivery, that's fine. But, I would kill to have the neighborhood pizza joint in my neighborhood, and I don't. So anyway, potential for you, Columbus, Ohio, you're going to make it happen.
Got kind of a fun one here. One of the Pizza Huts we actually were able to take over was the Pizza Hut that Michael used to go to in Reston, Virginia as a kid.
Wow.
And so as we're opening this, comes to me, he goes, I have one big request for this location. He goes, when I was a kid, there was a tabletop Pac-Man machine in this location that we would all run to and play as soon as we got there. It was a super hit. He goes, I know it's not really like we do video games in our places, but can we have one for this location? He also bet me that it would pay for itself in a year, which has not come true. But hey, everyone's having a good time.
That was before COVID hit. We made that bet.
Loss leader. Let's call it a loss leader. I'm sure it's getting some people in the restaurant. No, I love that model. And to get a little bit in the weeds though on this idea of a neighborhood restaurant, I'm wondering how that changes, especially you guys experience this coming from Elevation Burger, I'm sure, is how it changes how you look for real estate. Because, if I think of some of the locations, Cord, I think you were mentioning before, people are looking for high traffic, looking for, lifestyle centers, new developments. A lot of what they're looking for is places that have density, and you have a lot of people, especially during the day, who are coming in for work or whatever it might be. But inherently, if you look for that neighborhood pizza joint, less density, certainly not high traffic, not foot traffic at all. What are the things you're looking for? What are the touch points you look for when you do look for a real estate that says to you, aha, this is the ideal neighborhood pizza joint?
Yeah. So if you don't mind, so we're, fortunate here in the DC area. It's a very dense market. When you look at average incomes across the country, most of our submarkets here, rank pretty high. And so Cord and I had a lot of discussion about this because it's exactly as you said. It's a very different model than what we pursued with Elevation. Those fast casuals, they rely on the co-tenancy, they rely on the foot traffic. In Elevation, we wanted to be next to a Chipotle in the same shopping center as a Panera. And, because, right, you're not going to eat a salad every day. You're not going to eat a burrito every day. Hey, come have a burger. So what we decided is, look, those are still desirable markets. But we don't need to be on, as our industry loves to throw around the term, main and main. We don't need to be in the A location in the A market. And so why don't we look for things that are a little bit more off main and main, but are really still in these great markets that brings us a little closer to our community? I think a really great example, Cord, is the site that was near and dear to you that we worked really hard to get and eventually got, was in West Springfield, Virginia. It's not describing things to your listeners who probably have no idea about this metro area, but there's a huge pocket of development in that very close by area. It's called Franconia Springfield. Bye Bye Baby, just 100 box stores, every fast casual you can think of, right off the main drag. Okay, well, if you go 2 miles down the road, you actually get a little bit closer to another market that's a little bit more of a sub-market called Berger, which doesn't have the huge traffic drivers box stuff because they're driving to Franconia Springfield. But drive a little further down 2 miles, now you're situated directly between Franconia Springfield and you're situated near Berger, which doesn't have a ton of options. And so now we've put ourselves in this position where we're still in a great market. We've now figured out how to access one market that's a little bit more of a, residential pocket, but we haven't really given anything up in terms of density and access. We've just gone to a place that might make it a little bit easier for those families to access. We're closer to your soccer fields after your soccer game.
Yeah, down the street from the largest high school, just a tremendous location and community for that. I will say this: God bless our brokers. We are difficult to deal with because we're very picky. We only like stuff that's really weird. We love standalones. We want parking, and trying to do that in the DC metro area is very difficult. So we're constantly working with them to find new and unique things, and most of that's not on the market or not on the traditional CoStar listings and everything else. There's a lot of phone calls and door knocking and just looking for unique opportunities. So we've developed a good partnership with the folks that help to secure our real estate for us.
So this comes back around then to marketing. I mean, when we talk about some of those spots you were looking at for Elevation Burger, another big benefit is they're a billboard for themselves, right? I mean, people are walking by and they're like, "Oh, burger place. Okay, I want to go check that out." You lose that ability if you go for some of these more locations that you guys are talking about. So I imagine then that makes it all the more important to do this marketing that you're talking about, the community partnerships. But also, I imagine this also means you have to work harder to try to get loyalty from your customers, because if you have the neighborhoods around you and you become the neighborhood pizza joint, well, you need them to continue to be the pizza joint that the neighborhood goes to, so that you can ensure, I guess, that base of customers, if that's making sense. Are these the things that are on your mind? How are you thinking about kind of building that loyalty and ensuring that you don't need the billboard at Main and Main because you've got this consistent base of customers constantly coming in?
100%. Our job is to make sure that they have the best tasting pizza they've ever had and great service when they walk in the door. We are in their neighborhood as we try to be part of it. They still have a choice of where they're going to go. And all we can do is to continue to try to deliver the best quality product, the best service we can to continue that. But I will say the little bit of the flip side is there's in some of these areas, it's a little bit of a food desert too. So we can become that place that people want to go on a weekly basis. We have a variety of menu items that allows people to try something different when they do come. It's not that, oh, let's just go on Friday night to this restaurant and we got reservations, and then you're probably never going to go again. We can all think of those restaurants that you had to go try once, but it's not going to be your weekly spot. We can all think of those 5 restaurants right now that we go to every single week. We just want to be one of those 5.
I would also say, kind of interestingly, from kind of more of an urban planning type standpoint. So a lot of these restaurants that we're getting into, like the Pizza Hut in Reston, the Pizza Hut in Leesburg, our West Springfield location, a lot of these were built pre-1980. And so, whereas like our Reston location, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, that was practically Main and Main. Now you get into, a highly desirable real estate market like a Reston, Virginia, and big developers are going to go develop these big shopping centers. Well, a lot of them had to be a little bit more on the periphery, because that was the availability of land. Some of these weird, funky standalone buildings that have been around forever, they occupy some really great real estate. In fact, a lot of developers are trying to get their hands on it to go vertical in a lot of these markets. And so, because they're older buildings, some of them do happen to be really close to like the center of town and a center of a very high residential area.
But I wanted to talk about the notion of off-premises service, because obviously that's such a huge part of the pizza industry. And, Michael, you're mentioning how, the Main and Main itself has changed. Well, the definition of A+ real estate has changed because of digital ordering and delivery and third party and all of these factors in the last, 5 years, call it. Now, a lot of brands talk about the notion that they don't need that great real estate because they're doing so much in delivery that who cares where they are, because it's, getting delivered to the customer. So I'm curious for you guys, in this very popular pizza category that really survived on delivery for 2 years or so, how does that work for Pupatella? I mean, I imagine you must think about, whether or not off premises and really leaning into that works for the brand. But at the same time, you're trying to create this great in-house experience. What's the right model for you guys, and how do you leverage that, to your own success without trying to just become another pizzeria that's sending 90% of the orders out the door?
So, I mean, I would say the first step is, I, 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 I push back a little bit on the idea from some of the other restaurateurs that this is the model people want. That people want to have the food brought to them and everything else. I think people still want an experience. I think people still want to feel what it tastes like when it's fresh out of the oven. One of the jokes I always got to toss around too is, if I get food delivered by anybody or even pick up and bring it home, I don't get the credit for going out to dinner with my wife or my family. We have to go sit down somewhere, right? So there still is that desire and that need and that enjoyment that exists. We still offer, to-go service, and we still offer delivery services and those kind of things, just to allow those people who maybe they couldn't get there, or maybe they have three kids in the car and just can't deal with it tonight, kind of situation. That's all and fine, but I think that there a pendulum swung one way during COVID, and I think it's definitely going to be coming back the other, with people who want to go sit down and enjoy the full menu, desserts, and drinks, and we're going to be there for that.
And we did just like every other pizzeria during the pandemic spike significantly towards takeout. There were periods of time where we weren't, municipality regulations wouldn't even allow us to have people sit inside. And I will say, kind of back to when we were talking about our model change to full service, one of the big motivations for us too was bringing people back into the restaurant. We were very, very fortunate to be in pizza during the pandemic. There's, a lot of other colleagues in our industry and different service types and food types that just, it was really, really hard. So we were very fortunate. But what it did on the flip side is, pizza's takeout, and we opened a few restaurants during COVID. And so that we had signed leases for prior to COVID. And so they were the pizzeria model, but were being used more as like essentially not really a ghost kitchen, but almost. And so that is one of the things that we have seen too with this shift to full serve is, hey, pizza doesn't have to be a takeout thing. Pizza is enjoyed in person with friends over a glass of wine.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And true Italian tradition. People, big meals, lots of gathering. It's it's about family and community, and to pivot away just feels wrong.
Yeah, no, I fully support that. That sounds amazing to me. So you guys have locations number 9 and 10 getting ready to open. Tell me about the growth trajectory of this brand, because you're sticking with corporate growth. So it's a little bit different than Elevation Burger, and obviously is going to temper your growth a little bit more than otherwise if you had franchised. But what do you guys envision for Pupatella going forward?
Michael, you want to do it?
I'm currently sitting in restaurant location either 9 or 10. We're finishing up construction here, so
nice.
Could catch a nice internet signal there. Cord, I'll let you speak to the growth plan, but
sure. So our growth plan right now is like I said, we've got enough runway from our last capital raise to build about another 10 restaurants or so. Once that's completed, we'll make a determination as to the next area we want to grow to. We're probably going to focus a little bit more on going towards the south. We think that there's some really, really great neighborhoods down in Southern Virginia as well as in North Carolina that could really benefit from a Pupatella. So that's one of our discussions right now. But we're also going to see where the brand takes us. We're not really interested in just oversaturating something to oversaturate it. Michael and I saw in the franchise world forever where people are trying to open, 40 locations in, Western Wisconsin and these kind of pie in the sky things, or we'll be 2,000 units by this date. It's not how the restaurant industry is supposed to work. We're going to keep growing in an organic way that works for the brand, in clusters that we can still operate effectively and have people go check on the restaurants. And as big as Pupatella can get, is as big as it will, and that's really what we're going to do with this. Is just continue to have fun and continue to grow, but in a smart way.
That makes sense. All right, last question for you guys, real quick. Based on your careers, your experience with Elevation Burger, and now with Pupatella, I'm just curious, for those folks listening who are likewise growing emerging brands, they're in the early stages or they're just working to expand. You guys have had some pretty unique perspective in that you worked on Elevation Burger, You saw that grow, sell the brand. It was a franchise. Now you're working with Pupatella, corporate growth, a little bit more intentional about how you're growing this brand. What are the lessons you would impart based on what you've learned in these two companies? What are some things you would suggest to other folks, maybe in your shoes, who are trying to grow their own brands? Cord, I'll put you on the spot and have you go first.
Right. I would say I would actually say to know your strengths and know what it is you do. And if you are a chef and a restaurateur, that is a far different skill set from somebody who's going to go manage construction projects and expand restaurants and deal with all the accounting, business, insurance, I mean, everything you can think of. And so I'd find really good people that know how to do that and partner up with them or work with them or hire really good folks that share that skill set and be okay not knowing stuff. It's it doesn't matter how many years we have in this business. We'll still hear something and be like, wow, that's a great idea. How do we never think of that or know of that or anything else? We're all continuously learning. So I would encourage anybody who's looking at growth to kind of just find a mentor, find some people that have done it, and but just be really, really comfortable with not knowing what you don't know.
Michael, how about you?
I think one of the biggest, the biggest thing that I think differentiates our past journey and this journey, and that I think has really been insightful, is grow locally first. Stay true to the markets that you know. Stay within your base of consumers that you already have recognition with. Keep your operations within arm's length of each other so you can share resources. And then from a franchising perspective, don't franchise off just a single restaurant or a couple. Get policies and procedures down. Get a real good training manual together and an ops manual that you can show somebody the ropes. But that the local growth thing, I think, has been really it's been hugely refreshing here. Not to have to get on an airplane to go check on operations. We might have to drive 45 minutes. But you can really keep, especially in a corporate growth model, you can really keep a much, much better tab on your quality. And it kind of goes to your point, Cord's point is know who you are, keep your true North Star, in eyesight at all times. And how can you do that if you can't really walk into a restaurant operation on any given day?
Really smart. Those are good tips. Michael Berger, Cord Thomas of Pupatella. Guys, really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate it.
That was my interview with Pupatella partners Cord Thomas and Michael Berger. So what should you learn from this interview? Here are my 6 takeaways. My first takeaway is that one trick to being a successful entrepreneur is capitalizing on timing. This is sort of similar to luck, where this is one of those things you can't really control, but I think it is one of those things that you should pay a lot of attention to. Sometimes things fall into your lap at the right time. Where you can control it is you have to be aware of when that is happening, when that thing has fallen into your lap. In the case of Cord and Michael, they had recently departed Elevation Burger. They were looking for a new opportunity, and Pupatella just fell right into their laps. They had a conversation with Enzo and Anastasia, the founders of Pupatella, and it turned into this great business opportunity. Make sure you're recognizing when things are falling into your lap, because opportunities will pass you by and you do not want to miss them. My second takeaway is that scaling a complex supply chain requires that you consolidate your base of operations. The ingredients and the supply chain for Pupatella are obviously highly critical to its success. As I talked about in the interview, they are the largest VPN certified restaurant chain or Neapolitan pizzeria here in the US, as I understand it. And they have to maintain that high standard of ingredient sourcing to maintain that certification. The quality of their pizzas is their bread and butter. This is what they do and do well. But when they came into the business, Michael and Cord realized that the supply chain was kind of all over the mess. They were getting many multiples of deliveries every week. And one of the big projects they had was systemizing everything and building out that infrastructure for the supply chain in order to scale it. And to that end, they partnered with Performance Food Service to serve, as they said, as their quarterback. They needed to consolidate all of that sourcing and all of those vendor partners into one solid base of operations that could make sure all of that activity, all of the sourcing was happening consistently, and that they were projecting for what they would need in the future, and that it didn't get out of control, and that the wheels would not come off. This is very important if quality of ingredients is important to your own concept, especially if you're an emerging brand looking to scale for the first time. You need to consider how you're going to be able to pull in all of those sourcing, all of those vendor sources under one chain, one supply chain that can properly manage the scaling that you're planning to do. Get that out of the way before you scale, because the wheels could come off. If you're trying to maintain all of these vendors, even especially ones who are overseas like Pupatella has, it can get a little crazy and out of control, and it might affect the quality of your ingredients. So don't let that get out of control. Consolidate that base of operations. My third takeaway is that in an off-premises world, don't forget that table service provides some value too. Of course, last several years, pizza, the whole conversation's been around delivery and off-premises service. But Pupatella is taking a different direction with their own pizza innovation, in that they are going full service. They're going the other direction toward the experience. And I really appreciated how Michael and Cord discussed the fact that, customers are already paying more for their products than they ever had. They're paying for inflation. They're paying all these fees and tips. And if they're paying a higher price point, they expect a better experience and certainly a better product. And so for Michael, Cord, and the rest of the team at Pupatella, they decided that full service could be an added experience that could really be the differentiator for their concept. That by going from something that was a little bit more of a hybrid fast casual model to full service, they could take confusion out of that system. They could offer a better beer and wine program, and they could give the customers more bang for their buck, quite frankly. As Cord, I believe it was, who said in this conversation, he says, customers want to feel taken care of. Full service can do that. And even though it tends to be a higher ticket, it does provide value in that bang for the buck in a great experience. My fourth takeaway is that there is a hole in the market for neighborhood restaurants. It's not necessarily the case that neighborhoods lack restaurant choices. Of course, that's not the case. But I think, especially if you look at a lot of brands that are scaling today or being more intentional about their growth, a lot of them are chasing that main location. They want that lifestyle center, that high foot traffic neighborhood. They're not looking as much toward that residential neighborhood, a little bit off the beaten path. And Michael and Cord have recognized that there is an opportunity there. And they specifically talk about how they want to be like what Pizza Hut used to be. Pizza Hut, and I totally had the same experience when I was a kid. So this really resonated with me. Pizza Hut used to be kind of a place that your team would go, your little league team would go after the game, and you'd sit around the big table. You'd go play Pac-Man after your meal. It's nostalgia. It's a place of community, of comfort, of coming together. And today, with so much interest in convenience and off-premises service and everybody on the go, or with the interest from the restaurants and other businesses at getting in front of the most people that you possibly can, we've sort of lost that nostalgic experience. We've lost that neighborhood restaurant that, as Michael and Cord say, is woven into the fabric of the community. I really like that Pupatella is going in this direction and wanting to reclaim that territory, because neighborhoods deserve that kind of place, the kind of place that the community can come together. Now, of course, the way you approach site selection is going to be a little bit different. But you still, the marketing does its job for you, as we talked about, because the key to all of this is sponsoring local teams, investing in local businesses, giving back to the community, communicating in unique ways with the people who live within, a 2-mile radius of you. If you do all of those things, you're going to build a loyal customer base and build word of mouth in ways that, intentional marketing strategies will never really take care of. So all to say that neighborhood restaurant is something that Michael and Cord are looking to reclaim. And I think that's something for neighborhoods across the country and brands across the country should consider, that opportunity still exists. To that end, my fifth takeaway is that an off the beaten path location with a loyal customer base is just as good as the corner of Main and Main. And sort of echoing everything I just said, but the case just really still needs to be made. When a lot of restaurants talk about growth today, they really look toward those high foot traffic area, high density neighborhoods. Again, those lifestyle centers, the new developments. But that is one strategy, and it's not the wrong one, by the way. But also consider that your customers, it's harder to find parking. It's a little bit more of a experience in getting there as it is being there. It can be stressful, especially if you have kids. And that was something that came up in our conversation with Michael and Cord, that these things have downsides too, those kinds of high traffic locations. And again, as I was saying, that off the beaten path location, if you build a loyal customer base, you don't need that density. You don't need that high foot traffic, because you're essentially doing the job for you by being a place that people want to come to again and again and again, and not just the one time that they check out. Embed yourself in a residential area, and I don't think you will regret it. Even if it's a perceived C- or B- C+ location, look at the area around it. And if you have a strong neighborhood, strong residential area, I think that could be a good investment for your brand too. My sixth and final takeaway is stick to what you know how to do and where you know how to do it. I really appreciated Michael and Cord. My last question to them was just to provide some tips for you, the audience. And this came out of that. And I thought it was really interesting that they both said sort of different things, but they related to each other. And it was Cord who said, be comfortable that you don't know everything, know that you don't know it all. And you need to surround yourself with people who do know how to do it. Put a mentor in your life, find people who can help you, be strengths where you are weak. You're never going to know it all, and so don't try to. And that's a great sound piece of advice. And then when Michael, when he said, stick to your local market, your local market best. So when you're growing, don't immediately jump to another city that you don't know as well. Again, I thought that was really interesting because it's very related to what Cord had to say about stick to what you know. And Michael saying, do it where you know how to do it. All of it, adds up to say, whatever you know best, the neighborhoods you know best, the competencies that you have, your skill set, lean into those when you're opening, growing, scaling a restaurant brand, and it will have a return on that investment, in that you are going to really embed yourself and your business into the people and the places where it should be embedded, and there will be success in that. Those are all my takeaways for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to subscribe to Takeaway wherever you listen to podcasts and leave your feedback. You can also email me at sam.oches@informa.com. Thanks again, and talk to you next week.